Good evening again, folks, and this is another part of reading Sherlock Holmes. And so, continuing our reading, I guess it's the chapter 2 from the previous video. Just check it out. And yeah, hopefully you will enjoy my reading. And please comment down below for any suggestion or books that you want me to read for you. And anyways, let's start. And yes, I believe that's page 64. Still the same, a study in scarlet on the great alkali plain. In the whole world, there can be no more dreary view than that from the northern slope of the Sierra Blanco. As far as the eye can reach stretches the great flat plain land, all dusted over with patches of alkali, and intersected by clumps of the dwarfish chaparral bushes. On the extreme verge of the horizon lie a long chain of mountain peaks with their rugged summits flecked with snow. In this great stretch of country there is no sign of life, nor of anything appertaining to life. There is no bird in the still blue heaven, no movement upon the dull, grey earth. Above all, there is absolute silence. Listen as one many, there is no shadow of a sound in all that mighty wilderness. Nothing but silence, complete and heart-subduing silence. It has been said there is nothing appertaining to life upon the broad plain. That is hardly true. Looking down from the Sierra Blanco, one sees a pathway traced out across the desert, which winds away and is lost in the extreme distance. It is rutted with wheels and trodden down by the feet of many adventurers. Here and there are scattered white objects which glisten in the sun, and stand out against the dull deposit of alkali. Approach and examine them. They are bones, some large and coarse, others smaller and more delicate. The former have belonged to oxen, and the latter to men. For 1,500 miles one may trace this ghastly caravan route by these scattered remains of those who had fallen by the wayside. Looking down in this very scene, there stood upon the 4th of May, 1847, a solitary traveller. His appearance was such that he might have been the very genius or demon of the region. An observer would have found it difficult to say whether he was nearer to 40 or to 60. His face was lean and haggard, and the brown parchment-like skin was drawn tightly over the projecting bones. His long, brown hair and beard were all flecked and dashed with white. His eyes were sunken in his head, and burned with an unnatural lustre, while the hand which grasped his rifle was hardly more fleshy than that of a skeleton. As he stood, he leaned upon his weapon for support, and yet his tall figure, the massive framework, his bones suggested a wiry and vigorous constitution. His gaunt face, however, and his clothes, which hung so baggily over his shriveled limbs, proclaimed that what it was that gave him that senile and decrepit appearance. The man was dying from hunger and from thirst. He had toiled painfully down the ravine and onto this little elevation in the vain hope of seeing some signs of water. Now the great salt plain stretched before his eyes, and the distant belt of savage mountains, without a sign anywhere of plant or tree, which might indicate the presence of moisture in all that broad landscape there was no gleam of hope. North and east and west he looked with wild, questioning eyes, and then he realized that his wanderings had come to an end, and that there, on that barren crag, he was about to die. Why not here, as well as in a feather bed, 20 years hence? He muttered, as he seated himself in the shelter of a boulder. Before sitting down, he had deposited upon the ground his useless rifle, and also a large bundle tied up in a grey shawl, which he had carried slung over his right shoulder. It appeared to be somewhat too heavy for his strength, for in lowering it, it came down on the ground with some little violence. Instantly there broke from the grey parcel a little moaning cry, and from it there protruded a small, scared face with very bright brown eyes, and two little speckled dimpled fists. "You've hurt me," said childish voice reproachfully. "Have I, though?" the man answered penitently. "I didn't go for to do it." As he spoke he unwrapped the grey shawl and extricated a pretty little girl for about 5 years of age, whose dainty shoes and smart pink frock, with its little linen apron, all bespoke a mother's care. The child was pale and wan, but her healthy arms and legs showed that she had suffered less than her companion. "How is it now?" he answered anxiously, for she was still rubbing the towsy golden curls which covered the back of her head. "Kiss it and make it well," she said with perfect gravity, showing the injured part to him. "That's what mother used to do. Where's mother?" "Mother's gone. I guess you'll see her before long." "Gone, eh?" said the little girl. "Funny she didn't say goodbye. She most always did if she was just going over to auntie's for tea. And now she's been away 3 days. Say, it's awful dry, ain't it? Ain't there no water nor nothing to eat?" "No, there ain't nothing. There ain't nothing, dearie. You'll just need to be patient a while, and then you'll be all right. Put your head up again me like that, and then you'll feel bullier. It ain't easy to talk when your lips is like leather, but I guess I'd best let you know how the cards lie. What's that you've got?" "Pretty things, fine things," cried the little girl enthusiastically, holding up two glittering fragments of mica. "When we goes back to home I'll give them to brother Bob. You'll see prettier things than them soon," said the man confidently. "Just wait a bit. I was going to tell you, though. You remember when we left the river?" "Oh, yes." "Well, we reckon we'd strike another river soon, you see. But there was something wrong, compasses or map or something, and it didn't turn up. Water ran out, just except a little drop of the likes of you, and, and you couldn't wash yourself," interrupted his companion gravely, staring up at his grimy visage. "No, nor drink. And Mr. Bender, he was the first to go, and then Indian Pete, and then Mrs. McGregor, and then Johnny Holmes, and then dearie, your mother. Then mother's a leader too," cried the little girl, dropping her face in her pinafore and sobbing bitterly. "Yes, they all went except you and me. Oh my goodness. Then I thought there was some chance of water in this direction, so I heaved you over my shoulder and we tramped it together. It don't seem as though we've improved matters. There's an almighty small chance for us now." "Do you mean that we are going to die too?" asked the child, checking her sobs and raising her tear-stained face. "I guess that's about the size of it." "Why didn't you say so before?" she said, laughing gleefully. "You gave me such a fright. Why, of course. Now as long as we die we'll be with mother again." "Yes, you will, dearie. And you too. I'll tell her how awful good you've been. I'll bet she meets us at the door of heaven with a big pitcher of water and a lot of buckwheat cakes, hot and toasted on both sides, like Bob and me was fond of. How long will it be first?" "I don't know. Not very long." The man's eyes were fixed upon the northern horizon. In the blue vault of the heaven there had appeared three little specks which increased in size every moment, So rapidly did they approach, they speedily resolved themselves into three large brown birds, which circled over the heads of the two wanderers, and then settled upon some rocks which overlooked them. They were buzzards, the vultures of the west, whose coming is the forerunner of death. "Cocks and hens!" cried the little girl gleefully, pointing, pointing at their ill-omened forms, and clapping her hands to make them rise. "Say, did God make this country?" "Of course he did," said her companion, rather startled by this unexpected question. "He made the country down in Illinois, and he made the Missouri," the little girl continued. "I guess somebody else made the country in these parts. It's not nearly so well done. They forgot the water and the trees." "Why would you think of offering a prayer?" the man asked diffidently. "It ain't night yet," she answered. "It don't matter. It ain't quite regular, but he won't mind that, you bet. But he won't mind that, you bet. You say over them once that you used to say every night in the wagon when we was on the plains." "Why don't you say some yourself?" the child asked, with wondering eyes. "I disremember them," he answered. "I hain't said none since I was half the height o' that gun. Height o' that gun. I guess it's never too late. You say them out, and I'll stand by and come in on the choruses." "Then you'll need to kneel down on me too," she said, laying the shawl out for that purpose. "You've got to put your hands up like this. It makes you feel kind of good." It was a straight sight, had there been anything but the buzzards to see it. Side by side, on the narrow shore, knelt the two wanderers, the little prattling child and the reckless, hardened adventurer. Her chubby face and his haggard, angular visage were both turned up to the cloudless heaven in heartfelt entreaty to that dread being with whom they were face to face, while the two voices, the one thin and clear, the other deep and harsh, united in the entreaty of mercy and forgiveness. The prayer finished, they resumed their seat in the shadow of the boulder, until the child fell asleep, nestling upon the broad breast of her protector. Oh my goodness. He watched over her slumber for some time, but nature proved to be too strong for him. For 3 days and 3 nights he had allowed himself neither rest nor repose. Slowly the eyelids drooped over the tired eyes, and the head sunk lower and lower upon the breast, until the man's grizzled beard was mixed with the gold tresses of his companion. And the head sunk lower and lower upon the breast, until the man's grizzled beard was mixed with the gold tresses of his companion, and both slept the same deep and dreamless slumber. Had the wanderer remained awake for another half-hour, a strange sight would have met his eyes. Far away on the extreme verge of alkali plain, there rose up a little spray of dust, very slight at first, and hardly to be distinguished from the mists of the distance, but gradually growing higher and broader until it formed a solid, well-defined cloud. This cloud continued to increase in size until it became evident that it could only be raised by a great multitude of moving creatures. In more fertile spots the observer would have come to the conclusion that one of those great herds of bisons which graze upon the prairie land was approaching him. This was obviously impossible in these arid wilds. As the wheel of dust drew nearer to the solitary bluff upon which the two castaways were reposing, the canvas-covered hills of wagons and the figures of armed horsemen began to show up the haze, and the apparition revealed itself as being a great caravan upon its journey for the west. But what a caravan! When the head of it had reached the base of the mountains, the rear was not yet visible in the horizon. Right across the enormous plain stretched the straggling array, wagons and carts, men on horseback and men on foot, innumerable women who staggered along under burdens, and children who toddled beside the wagons or peeped out from under the white coverings. This was evidently no ordinary party of immigrants, but rather some nomad people who had been compelled from stress of circumstances to seek themselves a new country. There rose through the clear air a confused clattering and rumbling from this great mass of humanity, with the creaking of wheels and the neighing of horses. Loud as it was not sufficient to rouse the tool-tired wayfarers above them. At the head of the column there rode a score or more of grave, iron-faced men, clad in sombre, homespun garments and armed with rifles. On reaching the base of the bluff they halted, and held a short council among themselves. "The wells are to the right, my brothers," said one, a hard-lipped, clean-shaven man with grizzly hair. "To the right of the Sierra Blanco, so we shall reach the Rio Grande." "Fear not," said another. "Fear not for water," cried a third. He who could draw it from the rocks will not now abandon his own chosen people." "Amen, amen," responded the whole party. They were about to resume their journey when one of the youngest and keenest eyed uttered an exclamation and pointed up at the ragged crag above them. From its summit there fluttered a little wisp of pink, showing up hard and bright against the grey rocks behind. At the sight there was a general ringing up of horses and unslinging of guns, while fresh horsemen came galloping up to reinforce their vanguard. The word "Redskins" was on their every lip. "There can't be any number of Injuns here," said the elderly man who appeared to be in command. "We have passed the Pawnees, and there are no other tribes until we cross the great mountains." "Shall we go forward and see, Brother Stangerson?" asked one of the band. And I," cried a dozen voices. "I guess my my nose. Well, folks, my eyes are kind of sleepy, and I'm on page 70, which is kind of a good start for next week. Oh, next reading of Sherlock Holmes. I'd hate to put something. So hmm, I might I might be in need of bookmark probably next time. But for now, thank you so much, folks, for watching and um, listening. Hopefully, this helped you relax and have a good night's sleep. Have a sweet dreams, people, folks. And again, for the next reading, good night, y'all. Bye. Oh, don't forget to comment down below what you wanted to read me next. What you want to read for me next. Good night.